Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today is a very special Victorian related video all about Pteridomania. What, you've never heard of Pteridomania, the biggest craze to sweep Britain during the Victorian era? Well, as you may have gathered from the thumbnail to this video, Pteridomania is all about ferns. Yes, ferns, the plant. You may be able to spot a few in the background of this video. So today I want to really tell you about this random Victorian thing that happened in the mid-19th century in Britain, where people got very obsessed and invested in collecting and planting and growing and finding ferns. Throughout this video I'll be showing you my own rather small fern collection while telling you about this Victorian craze, and then in the second half of the video I will attempt to do a bookish fern DIY by making bookmarks out of some pressed ferns. Pteridomania as a term was first coined by author and priest Charles Kingsley in 1855, and this is what he said in his book Glaucus, or the Wonders of the Shore. Your daughters, perhaps, have been seized with the prevailing Pteridomania, and wrangling over unpronounceable names of species which seem different in each new fern book that they buy, and yet you cannot deny that they find enjoyment in it, and are more active, more cheerful, more self-forgetful over it than they would have been over novels and gossip, crochet and Berlin wool. I love this quote. First of all, it tells me that Pteridomania seems to have been a very, maybe a feminine type of hobby, because he talks about how your daughters are getting into ferns. Also seems to be like an up-and-coming thing, like the younger people are into it. I could just imagine groups of Victorian young ladies hiking through the countryside on the hunt for more ferns. As well as collecting and pressing ferns, people also started getting interested in growing ferns, and specifically the development of the Wardian case was instrumental in people being able to grow ferns inside of their homes. So the Wardian case was developed by a Dr. Nathaniel Ward, who wanted to grow ferns inside his house in London, but found that they didn't grow in the London air. So he basically made what we call today a terrarium. So he made a tiny little glass container that was closed off and allowed ferns to grow in the air and humidity that they need. And that became a very popular item for people to buy and to grow ferns in. Then there was also the publication of the book A History of British Ferns by Edward Newman, which was published in 1844, and that is just, as you would imagine, a kind of encyclopedia of ferns. I had a little flick through it. It's very dull if you're not super into ferns, but I guess the Victorians were super into ferns, so this book was quite popular. And it's got some illustrations of different types of ferns and where you find them, and you know, the history of them and the biology of them. I will leave links to the sources I've used. Spoiler, it's mostly Wikipedia in the description box. So if you're interested in the history of fern collecting in Britain, you can go ahead and look more into it. I just think it's such a weird and fun kind of thing. Is so typically Victorian, it's so quirky and strange. But also, I get the Victorians. I too like ferns, and what I like about them, well, I can show you as a show of my fern collection. I personally have 5 different ferns in my home, and let's start with the most common one that I have. This is a Boston fern. This was in my living room until very recently, but I've moved it up here because the growing conditions are a little bit better in my office. So this one I bought because it's so Victorian. Like, it so reminds me of an old Victorian parlour. You know, it's a very old-fashioned kind of houseplant, but I love that about it. It grows completely wild. It's really fun to look at, and I think what I enjoy about ferns is the same thing that the Victorians enjoyed about ferns, and that is this kind of ancient aspect to the plants. You look at this and you can just imagine the planet millions of years ago with plants just like that growing there. Ferns are very primitive plants. They don't have any flowers. They're very, very simple, and I love that about them. So this is my Boston fern. It could do with being a little bit more symmetrical, so I'm gonna have to make sure that I rotate this so it gets an equal amount of light throughout the week. And the other thing is, and you'll notice that as I show you my other ferns, these are very, very attractive to cats. So my cats do tend to nibble my ferns, making them maybe less full and healthy looking as you'd expect. Next up is this, and this is a bird's nest fern. You can see why it's called that. It's got a very different structure. Again, you can see lots of bits where my cats have nibbled at the plant. Luckily, ferns are non-toxic, which is another reason why I love them. So the cats are okay to chew on them without poisoning themselves. And this one I actually bought in Aldi. This is, the inner plastic pot, and then I put it in a nicer looking cover pot. There's not really much to say about this fern. It's not one of my favourites. It's interesting looking. Like the Boston fern, it's growing a bit wild. It's not as symmetrical as I might want it to be. Something that all ferns have in common, if you're keeping them as houseplants, is that they all need a relatively high amount of humidity in the air, which makes them a little bit finicky. If you don't give them that humidity, then they get brown edges, which you've probably seen on the Boston fern, and they just don't do as well. So being a good fern mum, I also have a humidity meter, which gives me the humidity and temperature. So right now it's 64% humidity, which is very good for the ferns, but probably not so good for the books on my TBR. And yeah, something else I like about ferns is that they're all relatively cheap. This fern cost me £3 in Aldi, so I'm very pleased with that purchase. Then we get to the diva of all ferns. This is the gorgeous, gorgeous maidenhair fern. But boy, is this tricky to grow. I've had this for a few months now, and it almost died on me because it didn't have enough humidity. Since I've put it in my office, it's growing a little bit better. You can see that it's getting some new growth in, some tiny fronds that are coming in now, but still, it's still very much recovering from being in a slightly too dry environment. But this is the most gorgeous fern. The leaves are so delicate, and I mean, look at it. Just look at this. And don't tell me it looks like parsley, because it does not look like parsley, and my mum said it looked like parsley, and that's just not fair. Next up, this is possibly the easiest to grow fern that I've got. This is incredibly sturdy, and this is a hybrid fern, and it's called an Asplenium parvati. This one has got the kind of maidenhair-like appearance of the maidenhair fern, but it's a lot more robust. This one I find doesn't tend to get brown. As you can see, it's in really good shape. The cats don't eat this one either, probably because the leaves are a little bit too thick. And this one is probably the fern I would recommend if you want ferns, but you don't want to bother with the, the upkeep. This one almost died on me as well because I simply forgot about it and didn't water it for like 2 weeks straight, and all of the fronds were just hanging down. I thought I'd killed the plant, but I gave it a good drink of water and it perked right up. So Asplenium parvati, highly recommended if you want ferns without the bother of having ferns. But my favourite I have saved till last, and that is it's all the way over here. This gorgeous, gorgeous, massive queen. This is my blue star fern. You can see it's got a silvery sheen to it and some really amazing shaped fronds. Look at that. How gorgeous is this? It also has on the bottom, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but it's got these weird looking feet. You might be familiar with a type of fern called a rabbit's foot fern, which has got these furry little things at the bottom. As you can tell, I'm not a botanist, so I don't know the technical terms for these things, but it just gives it a little bit extra weirdness, which I like. And this one's also been really easy to keep, despite the cats, again, quite liking a nibble of this. It's been growing really well. It seems, again, a little bit more robust than the Boston and the Maidenhair ferns. And it's just grown really quite quickly. Like all other ferns, this one likes a lot of humidity and quite moist soil, so don't let this one dry out too much. In fact, I think this one needs a watering. I'll sort that out later. But yeah, this one's my absolute favourite, just because, I don't know, it's gorgeous, it's otherworldly, it's alien looking, and I like that about it. And it rustles. So those were the 5 ferns that I keep in my house. I am definitely keen on collecting more ferns and becoming a proper Victorian style pteridomaniac, but for now that's what I've got, and I'm happy with that collection so far. Let me know if you have any ferns in your house, or if you want any ferns after seeing my amazing collection of them. They are wonderful little plants, and as I mentioned before, rather inexpensive. So now I have told you about the Victorian fern craze and my own personal fern collection, I'm going to attempt a DIY. This is where I should mention that I am really crap at DIY. It's not a skill I have, it's not a skill I've ever had, so this could horribly go wrong. But the plan is to make some fern bookmarks using fern fronds that I have been pressing. Let's get to the DIY then. Before you get your crafting supplies out, I'd recommend watching till the end of the video to see if this actually works, because I have no idea if this is working. I'm not working from any instructions. I am just making it up as I go along. But here are the supplies I have. So first of all, I've got a bit of brown paper to cover my desk so I don't get any glue on it. I've got some plain white card and some brushes. I also have 2 different types of glue because I'm not sure which one's going to work best. I've got some spray adhesive and some PVA craft glue. I have some scissors. I have a ruler somewhere. I've got this high gloss clear varnish, which I didn't buy specifically for this DIY, I just had it. I don't know why, because this is unopened. This is what you use to cover up wood, I believe, to seal wood. But I'm going to use this on the bookmarks. And then finally I've got my fern fronds, and they have been pressed inside the pages of A History of Western Music, which is, in all honesty, the most use I've ever gotten out of this book. So let's see how they came out. First up, we have the pressed Boston fern fronds. So I've got 3 of those. Then I have some leaves from my blue star fern. So these have been pressing inside of the pages of this book, and then I piled another half a dozen books on top. And they've been there for about a week. This one, the blue star fern, has actually gone blue. I'm not sure if that means that it's rotting or what. This one, Looks a little bit better. This one has remained green and is all papery. I know I've got the maidenhair fern in there somewhere. Oh, there it is. That's also pressed really well, although some of the leaves are kind of crumpled up and overlapping. But that's fine. So I'm going to get my brown paper out to cover the desk, and then I'm going to see if I can turn the camera so you can actually see what I'm doing. Also, I don't know where my ruler went, so I'm going to have to do this without it, which is great. Well done. Great planning there, Claudia. Let's see if the old fold-over method works. That's close enough to parallel. So then the next step, I guess, would be to stick the fern on here. I'm going to try the spray glue first, see if that works. Oh, great. I opened it and the nozzle fell off. That's not meant to happen, is it? Ugh. Okay, right. If I accidentally spray my camera, I'm going to be so annoyed. Ah! Oh, I see. Okay, right. So everything's covered in glue. And again, I'm not sure if this is how you use it. Which way around are we putting the fern on there? Let's put it this way around. That seems to be... Ooh, okay, it's on there. Okay, right. Cool. Cool. We'll leave this to dry. Oh, this stinks. This is our first attempt. Let's put this one aside to dry. Oh, I've got glue on my hands. Ew. Right. Next one. So I'm going to cut out a rather thinner piece of card. And then I'm going to try and place the fern like this. And then wrap the back around. I'm not sure if this is going to come out well, but we'll try. I hate this. I hate this so much. Let's try a jaunty angle. Okay, it's sticking, it's sticking. So I guess I have to then also spray the back of this. Oh, I'm going to get spray all over my hands. Yeah, I'm not sure this one is a success, but I guess the front side doesn't look too bad. Again, let's put this aside to dry and get on with the crown and glory of my fern collection, the maidenhair. At this point, my fingers are very covered in glue. Also, you can't see her, but my cat Minerva is looking seriously concerned in the corner. Yeah, that didn't come out very centered, but that's fine. That's fine. Let's just try and move the leaves around a bit. Okay. You know, I wonder if I shouldn't just cut off the sides instead of wrapping them around the back. I think I'm going to try that. So I'm going to leave this to dry like this and then cut around the edges. Oh, you know what I could do, since I've only got one bit of fern bookmark left? I can just put them onto this and then cut around the shape later for maybe a little bit of a different look. So let's try. Minerva has now left the room. Very wise, because this air can't be good for you. This is now covered in fern. And that also needs to dry. I'm going to open the window for a bit, and I will see you in a moment for you and for me, in however long it takes for these bookmarks to dry. Hello again, I am back. It is half an hour later, and I have a cup of tea and a screwdriver. And no, it didn't take me half an hour to make a cup of tea. It took me 5 minutes to make a cup of tea and then 25 minutes to find the screwdriver. Why do I have a screwdriver? Ah, yes. So now I'm going to try and add a coat of the wood varnish over the bookmarks. The glue has mostly dried, but it is still slightly tacky, which I think will probably help with the varnishing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Any guesses as to whether I'll be able to open this? I know you stick a screwdriver in there somehow. I don't know where you actually stick the screwdriver. Like what? How does this work? Ooh, 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 I think I've cracked it. Yes. Come on, baby. Well, hey. Okay, does this smell as well? Ooh, oh God, what did I? I'm gonna dip in the varnish and then. Ooh, oh no, this is sticky. And then try and varnish the bookmark, you know, like what I said I was gonna do. Okay, this is quite thick and loopy. Ah, yeah, going on smooth. Maybe I should have looked at the instructions for this, like, am I doing it right? I don't really know. I like how, as well as the frond of Boston fern, this is also now sealing in single cat hair. But that's how you know it's mine. This is now covered in this varnish. I'll put that aside to dry again. Who's next? And this one, yes. So this is the one that I wanted to trim down just by cutting alongside the bookmark edges. Let's get a coat of varnish on here as well then. Right, off onto the drying station. And this is why I never do DIYs. It's just not my thing. It's just not what I do best. And now I have to wait again for the varnish to dry. And I'm also going to see how I can actually clean this off. Probably going to use acetone to clean this off. That seems like the thing to do. Allow 2 hours for surface drying and 8 hours for hard drying in normal conditions. Great, so I guess I can't use the desk for the rest of the day. See you in a couple of hours. It is 2 hours later and the varnish has dried, but not completely yet. This is what the bookmarks look like now, but they do still have to dry a little bit because the surface is still a bit tacky, so I'm going to leave it until at least tomorrow before I actually put that in a book. This one's my favourite. I love how this turned out. I think the maidenhair fern, as I said earlier, is the most gorgeous one anyway, and I think this turned out really well. I also really like the one with the Boston ferns, and this is probably the most iconic, I guess, fern shape. So these two, this is the one that I cut out, which, you know, looks a little bit weird, a little bit like a caterpillar. And then this is the one on the rectangular-ish bookmark. I like that as well. My least favourite bookmark is actually one from my favourite fern, and that is the blue star fern. First of all, the varnish has taken away that lovely silvery blue colour of the leaf. But also I'm just not, you know, keen on the placement of the leaf on the bookmark. But either way, I now have 4 new bookmarks of varying sizes. I've got this gigantic one for maybe a hardcover, and then this one, this more petite one to take with me in my paperbacks. And I'm going to be enjoying these as I continue my Victober journey through Victorian literature. So after doing this DIY, and it came out mainly okay, it still smells of solvent in here despite me having had the window open for the past hour. Yeah, I can highly recommend doing something like that. If you have any ferns lying about, or obviously, you know, other plants are available if you haven't got any ferns but you've got something else, and you can use that as well. and it was a fun way of getting into the mindset of Pteridomania, the Victorian craze for ferns. I'll leave you with a fun fact about the Victorian craze for ferns. Victorians went so wild in their fern hunting and fern collecting that some native ferns of Britain almost went extinct as a result of it. The more you know. Thank you for watching. Bye.